inklings of the enemy saying, what are you doing up there, Ron? But listen, if you're hearing voices in your head saying you can't do this and you think it's from God, you got to know God doesn't operate that way. God always comes to us first with grace. And for some of you, there was a time when you were chasing after God. You were passionate about it. Maybe it was in high school, at camp. Maybe it was when you first became a parent. But there was a time when you were passionate about God. But if we were to look at your life right now, you're being very ineffective for the kingdom of God. And I'm not trying to convict you. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. But you just know you're not doing what you should be doing. You're not making disciples. But what does God do with people who fail, people who get off course? What does God do with people like us, people who still mess up? Peter answers that question for us. He feeds us breakfast. He shows us He cares for us. He strengthens us and sends us back out to do the work. And our only response is just to come back to Him. As we saw last week with Elijah, when you're down, when you're confused, when you're ashamed, Jesus extends grace so that we can make disciples. have any fish, do you? No, they answered. Cast the net on the right side of the boat, he told them, and you'll find some. Now, he had done this before, and that's important to go back and read that. So they did, and they were unable to haul it in because of the large number of fish. Therefore, the disciple, the one Jesus loved, said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he tied his outer garment around him, which is kind of unusual. Normally, you would jump into the water without your outer garment, but Peter was not like some of us. So, for he was stripped and plunged into the sea. But since they were not far from land, about 100 yards away, the other disciples came in the boat. In other words, it wasn't that far. I mean, like Peter, if you just waited, we'd have got you there, you know. But they dragging the net full of fish. When they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish lying on it and bread. Jesus didn't eat their fish anyway, but, you know, he had some. "Bring some of the fish you've just caught," Jesus told him. So Simon Peter got up and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. Even though there were so many, the net was not torn. "Come and have breakfast." I love that. Jesus likes breakfast. Isn't that cool? Jesus told him. None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them. He did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. Now we get to the part I want to focus on in the story. Specifically, how is Jesus going to respond to Peter, the one who's denied him, the one who's rejected him? Look at verse 15, the first part of it. When they had eaten breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, this is like the elephant in the room, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Do you love me more than these? Now, we don't know what Jesus was referring to when he said, "Do you love me more than these?" It could have been the other disciples. These were his buddies. You know, I mean, do you love me more than these guys? You've gone back to hanging out with them. You're not doing what I asked you to do, but do you love me more than these? Could have been the fish. I mean, that's what he knew to do. He was a fisherman. Any fishermen in the room? You like fishing, you know? And whatever it was, we don't know, but obviously, Peter loved them. But the question is, Peter, do you love me more than these? Now let me just pause and just ask you a question. What are your these? I mean, if Jesus was going to question you this morning, insert your name, do you love me more than these? What would Jesus be referring to in your life? Would it be your career? Would it be your bank account? Would it be your position? Would it be your hobby? Maybe it would even, could I say this? Would it be your family? Do you love me more than these? Whatever these is. Because that's an important part of effective discipleship. Here's something I know, and you know this too if you think about it. We're most passionate about, most committed to those things we love the most. The degree of our love often determines our degree of commitment. And to really grow as a disciple, some of us may have to be broken about, are these the things that we love the most? Things we're holding on to most? Well, how did Peter reply? Verse 15, second part of it. "Yes, Lord," he said to him. "You know that I love you. Come on, Jesus, you know that I love you." But Jesus said, "Shepherd my sheep," he told him. Do you see what I see there? I saw it last week with the story of Elijah. Jesus said, "Peter, if you love me," I mean, you say, "If you love me, feed my sheep." Now remember, Peter was confused. He was scared. He was dealing with guilt. He didn't know how Jesus was going to respond when he saw him the next time. And so we can learn this. When you're confused, when life doesn't make sense, maybe when you look at the world and you're afraid, what does a follower of Jesus do? Does a follower hide? Do they run away? Do they complain? No, Peter teaches us here. It's a powerful reminder. We feed Jesus' sheep. We make disciples. The solution to Peter's dilemma was to get back to obedience. Feed my sheep. This was Peter's call back into ministry, back to discipleship. It's also a powerful reminder to me. Others may give up on you when you fail. Jesus won't. So emotionally distraught, Peter witnessed the grace of God on his life. So we would think, that's the end of the discussion, right? I'm back. We're in it together. Good job. Have you ever seen somebody get so passionate about Christ? They're just like on fire, and then a few weeks later you don't even see them around church? It's one of the saddest but most prevalent realities of ministry. I've seen it for years. In fact, if somebody comes and the first week they're ready to sign up for everything, Pastor, I'm in, you let me do everything, I just kind of stand back. I'm like, we'll see. Because I've just seen it too many times. They get so excited and then they're nowhere to be found. I'm capable of producing an emotional response sometimes. I am. I could probably get people to the altar if I wanted to. But it may or may not be real. And so I wonder if Jesus wasn't thinking, okay, Peter, you talk a good game, but is it real? And so Jesus wants to make sure he's sincere. Look at verse 16. A second time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, he said to him, you know that I love you. Shepherd my sheep, he told him. He asked him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Feed my sheep, Jesus said. It's interesting, the third time that Jesus says, do you love me? The words in the original language are much deeper than ours. And the third time here, Jesus changed the word for love, and he uses the most intimate form, the most trusting word for love. But Jesus also changed the word each time when he said, feed my sheep or shepherd my sheep. It was a different word each time, and each time it was a bigger commitment on the part of the one doing the disciple making. It was more involved. He was telling Peter to be more involved each time. And that's basically the goal of discipleship. It's a deeper commitment. It's a closer walk to Christ. What may even be more interesting here, every time Peter answered, when Jesus said, do you love me? He answered the third response, that third level of love, that deepest level of love. Oh, I love you. That deepest level. I think Jesus knew, look, you talk a good game, but I don't know that you're there yet. One thing we fail to understand is that discipleship is a process. None of us come to salvation and instantly we have it all figured out. There's not anyone in the room. If you're still alive, Jesus has somewhere else he wants to take you, something else he wants to do in your life, some part of your character he wants to make more like Christ. It's a process. It takes a lifetime. But Jesus was emphasizing to Peter, this is the work I've called you to do. Here's what I think Jesus was saying to Peter. The more you love me, Peter, the more you concentrate on loving me, your natural reaction is going to be to love people and to make disciples. My story is not as dramatic as that, but I have a story like that in my own life. If you've been here very long, you've heard it before. It's one of those few life-changing, life-altering times that you just get to share frequently because it changes you. Several years ago, a number of years ago now, we really felt like we were being called to plant churches in New York City. Because I'm kind of a church growth kind of, I observe those kind of things. And I was watching how the people are moving to the big cities. That's why we're in Chicago. But the churches have moved out. And so we need more people going to the cities and investing in those cities. And so we really felt like we were being called to New York, and we like New York, who doesn't like Broadway, right? And stuff like that. And so Central Park's cool. And so we went there kind of on a vision trip. And one day Cheryl was getting ready, and I went out walking the streets of New York, and I just was talking to God. And I said, I said, God, if you want us to move to New York, it's such a big commitment. I just need you to give me an overwhelming, undeniable love for these people that I can't escape. And it was a simple prayer. And I know we're Baptists, and so the fact I'm about to share with you that God spoke to me, and that'll upset some of you, but God spoke to me. And it wasn't audible, but it was very clear. And God said, Ron, and I love he knows my name. He said, Ron, you're asking me to do the wrong thing. I said, well, what are you need to concentrate on having an undeniable, overwhelming love for me. And if you do that, wherever you go, you're going to love the people, naturally. And it was such an overwhelmingly freeing moment. I'll promise you this, I would not be in Lexington, Kentucky today. I would not have left church planting where I could wear sandals to preach. I would not be in an established church had God not given me that command to love Him first. And I know in ministry, if I'm not loving you very well, my problem is I'm not loving Him very well. But I know this, the more I love God, the more I naturally want to invest in other people. And that's